Hi, folks. I don't know what Jeff Gibbs and Michael Moore wanted to achieve with their new documentary, Planet of the Humans. If they wanted to start a conversation about the limits of renewable energy and how to deal with them, they failed. The film has not created a conversation, it has created the opposite, a controversy. This is a shame because renewables do have some shortcomings that we need to seriously address if we wish to transition towards them and away from fossil fuels. But the film lacks focus, solutions, and contains too many bad faith attacks on the environmental movement to generate anything but defensive responses. While the film is not completely without merit, the number of missed opportunities so outnumber its good points that it will frustrate most people familiar with the subject matter. This comes at least partially from the format. Moore's polemical documentary style works well for skewering conservatives, but for starting a dialogue with fellow left environmentalists, it either lands too hard or misses the target completely. The most glaring example of a missed opportunity comes when they interview Richard Heinberg, the head of the Post-Carbon Institute. Amongst other things, this organization has some of the most reliable and least biased numbers on the efficiency of different energy sources. Another filmmaker could have used this as an opening to introduce the viewer to some basic concepts and phrases for understanding energy efficiency and renewable energy, namely EROEI, that's energy returned on energy invested, which gets represented as a net energy ratio. You can think of EROEI the same way you think of regular ROI, return on investment. Just as you might spend some money in order to make some money, you will expend some energy in order to generate some energy. A net energy ratio is the best way to express this. Depending on different factors, coal will give you between 40 and 80 units of energy for every unit you put into getting it from the ground to your electric socket. This gives it a net energy ratio between 40 to 1 and 80 to 1. It has the highest net energy ratio of any energy source by far, which is one of the reasons we burn so much of it despite the fact that it is trashing our atmosphere. Conventional oil has a net energy ratio of about 25 to 1, but that oil has become more scarce and a lot of the new discoveries require more effort to get them out of the ground or refine, lowering their net energy ratio considerably. Think tar sands, shale oil, and heavier, more sulfurous crude. Photovoltaic solar panels, the technology everyone gets excited about, has a ratio somewhere between 10 to 1 and 20 to 1. At around 30 to 1, industrial wind operations have the best net energy ratio of any renewable. Some of you might have zoned out while I was talking about this, so I understand why Gibbs and Moore omitted it, but not putting this information in the film does a great disservice to viewers and seriously muddles an argument the film tries to make. For example, at one point in the movie, we hear the claim that a solar installation produced less energy than went into it, causing critics to counter that this is either not true or that new panels are more efficient. I don't have the details about this facility available to check this claim, but neither the film nor its critics address two crucial points. First, breaking even is not enough. If all you can do with a solar facility, or any power source, is generate the same amount of energy that went into it, then you don't have any energy left over to power anything else. How much more you need seems like a topic for debate, but particularly in an expanding economy like the one we have, you need many times more, which is why myself and many others see shifting away from an economy that prioritizes growth as part of the solution. If you have an economy based on growth, renewables that come online will merely expand the grid capacity instead of replacing fossil fuels, a point that the film rightly highlights. Second, while many responses to the film correctly state that Gibbs uses old examples of solar panels and wind turbines and that renewables have gotten more efficient, they don't specify how much more efficient they have gotten. By omitting this information, critics of the film seem to imply that renewables can provide as much energy as we currently get from fossil fuels. They can't, or that they definitely will one day. They might, but that is at the very least a topic for debate. A more honest charge, looking at a newer setup, might have inspired a more honest response rather than defensive ones. Let's take a look at one of these examples to give you an idea what I mean. In the film, we see a solar array roughly the size of a football field in Lansing, Michigan, that operates at about 8% efficiency and over the course of a year can power about 10 homes. Powering the city of Lansing using these panels would require a space 3 miles by 5 miles. Since they shot this footage 10 years ago, we now have panels that are 22% efficient. This would shrink the amount of space needed by almost a third. But that's still a big footprint, and we don't honestly know how much more efficient they can get. The more optimistic will claim that human ingenuity knows no bounds and that solar panels will keep getting increasingly efficient to the point that they can completely replace fossil fuels. The more pessimistic will argue that we should not bank on this because an increase in efficiency to this level is not guaranteed, and even if we can achieve these gains, we might have to deal with other limiting factors like cost and availability of necessary materials. This is a real discussion that we need to have, but it is not one that the film is inspiring. Instead, the movie has caused environmentalists like Josh Fox to say something along the lines of, "This movie says renewables don't work, but they do." This oversimplified conversation does not really help, and I find it so unfortunate that the movie has produced such an unproductive discourse. This is all before even addressing the issue of intermittency caused by the fact that the sun does not shine constantly and the wind does not blow endlessly. Making up for this shortcoming requires burning fossil fuels or building storage facilities which lower your energy return on investment and often rely on scarce materials. Again, there is a discussion to be had about how to build storage capacity and if we can do it in a way that does not require scarce minerals and elements. The film does not dive into these questions. It takes a less productive route, although I will give it credit for showing the scale of these processes and how much they rely on fossil fuels, a point that often gets overlooked. In any case, instead of getting into this messy area, Gibbs and Moore decided to show the shortcomings of renewables by highlighting some solar and wind setups that fell apart, as well as festivals claiming to run entirely on renewables even though they depend on the grid or diesel generators. While showing a bunch of hippies who don't realize that their supposedly solar-powered concert still needs fossil fuels might make for a more engaging film than drilling into the details of energy efficiency and returns, it obfuscates the real issues at hand. I found it strange that a movie about renewable energy never mentioned EROEI or net energy. I found it even stranger that it spent so much time talking about biomass. I don't know anybody who considers biomass very green, so it seemed like an odd thing to spend so much time skewering. However, to the film's credit, they point out a bait and switch that takes place with biomass where a green investment fund or a grid gets touted as green, but actually contains a good deal of biomass. Using biomass to generate electricity does not present a problem when using wood scraps that would otherwise get discarded. But as the film points out, too often biomass facilities end up using not wood chips, but entire trees. Unsurprisingly, many of these organizations have ties to the timber industry. I have a general distrust of any large organization, and I don't exclude environmental organizations from this. So it felt good to have my suspicions confirmed. But I think the film could have pointed this out more tactfully. We live in a capitalist system that makes hypocrites of us all. Moore and Gibbs could have acknowledged this by saying, "Hey, doesn't it suck that environmental groups need to ally with their mortal enemies to stay afloat and keep running their organizations?" Instead, I don't really know what conclusion they want us to draw from this. Which brings me to the final problem with this movie. It does not contain any answers to the crisis we find ourselves in, and in this absence, it leaves people feeling rather hopeless or worse. The film contains some references to reducing consumption, which I find a necessary component to tackling our ecological crisis, but it does not go into details on this. Several people interviewed in the film do reference overpopulation as a problem. This has caused a lot of leftists to react to the film very negatively because we do have a bunch of solutions that follow from this kind of thinking, and they are pretty ugly. The Gates Foundation, for example, talks a lot about population control in Africa, where people consume far less than they do in the US or Western Europe. Do I need to point out the racism implicit in this solution? I don't necessarily wince at talk of overpopulation like some lefties, but the fact that so many do does make me wish people would avoid that kind of talk. Like most polemics, this movie is sterile, meaning it does not produce anything positive. It has generated a lot of heat, but not much light. It has pointed out some problems, albeit in a very inept way, but it does not give any solutions or a more positive vision for going forward. I frankly think my video on the subject of renewable energy not only does a much better job informing viewers on the limits of renewables, it also provides solutions and a vision of a world where we use less energy but have a better quality of life. I won't rehash it here. You can check the link on the screen or in the description. I managed to cover a lot more ground than Planet of the Humans in a fraction of the time, and leave viewers knowing there is another way instead of feeling hopeless about the situation and frustrated with environmentalists. Please check it out, and if you like it, share it around in place of Planet of the Humans. So thanks for watching, folks. Please like, share, and subscribe. Check out my other videos. If you really like what I do, please support me on Patreon. It helps me keep doing what I'm doing on this channel. I'm Greg Belvedere. Remember, all generalizations are stupid, so never speak in absolutes. Rebel Base, out.